Advisory Planning Assessment Panel on the 7th of July, 2021. I declare the meeting open at 3:30 p.m. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. I'll shortly introduce the other panel members, but firstly I have a few matters to run through. If everyone can please place themselves on mute unless they are speaking, and if there are any technical difficulty experienced by a speaker, we may move to the next item if it can't be resolved and come back to them. So I'll start with the acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders both past, present and emerging, and I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. There are no apologies and there are no declarations of interest for this meeting. I just want to go through just a few procedural things. This meeting, apart from the closed deliberative session, is being live streamed to the council website and recorded. There's only one speaker for a few items today, so the procedure is that speaker, normally I give them 3 minutes, but because there's so few, I'll give them 5 today. So they will speak, and then there may be questions from panel members, and I may ask the council officers to respond. Once we've heard from all of the speakers, we'll go into closed session to deliberate, and then we'll reopen the meeting for me to announce our decisions, and that will be live streamed, and the minutes should be on the council website. The aim would be by close of business tomorrow. So I'd now like to just introduce the panel members. I'm a solicitor specialising in local government and planning law with over 35 years experience, and I've been sitting on local planning panels in the Sydney metropolitan area for 3.5 years. I'll just hand over now to Heather Wharton, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everybody. Yes, I'm a town planner. I run my own business, mainly working for councils and state government. And I've been on planning panels as an expert and a community member for the last 3 years, and I've been reappointed as an expert and alternate chair for various planning panels elsewhere in Sydney. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Alf Lester, take yourself off mute. You're on mute, Alf. Alf.
Yep. Apologies for that. I took your instruction literally. I'm an architect, I'm an urban designer. I run a practice that is involved in broad-scale regional planning, local planning and architectural projects. I am involved in a number of local planning panels in the Sydney region, and I also am involved as chair of a number of design excellence panels in various councils throughout Sydney.
Thank you. And the community member, Chris Mccann, if you could just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Julie. My name's Chris Mccann. I live in Burrawang. I've been invited to join the independent panel for this advisory committee for developments. My background is in both law enforcement, also then after I finished studying law, I went into compliance, governance, probity and risk, where I've spent the last 25 years working in those areas, and represent obviously the Wingecarribee area on this panel.
Thank you. So the first item is 5.1, development application for a internal alterations to create an enclosed boxing gym at Part Lot 1 DP 724437 Sports Circle 1A Old Hume Highway, Mittagong. There are no speakers for this item, so we'll move to item 5.2, which is development application 21/1483, subdivision of land to create 2 lots. at 10 Old Hume Highway, Berrimah. And Mr. Scott Lee will address us on this item for the applicant. And Mr. Lee, as I indicated, at 1 DP 724437 Sports Circle 1A Old Hume Highway, Mittagong. There are no speakers for this item, so we'll move to item 5.2, which is Mr. Lee, if you could turn off your live, have you got the live stream on?
You've taken my screen. Can you get my screen back, please?
And Mr. Scott Lee will address us on this item for the applicant.
Yeah,
and Mr. Lee, as I indicated, sorry, I can see you.
I think if we stop sharing the screen for a moment, you might be able to minimise.
Correct. I think thank you. I've sorted that out now. That was what the problem was. So thank you. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you and we can
you very much.
see you, and you can have 5 minutes today. Yes.
Oh, look, thank you, Chair. On this particular item, I have, I'm speaking on behalf of the property owner. I have read the report and the recommendation for approval. We're very pleased with that outcome. I don't wish to make any particular comments in relation to that, other than just to confirm that there's a couple of places in the report that talk about a variation to the minimum lot size. However, that is overridden by 4.2C of the LEP, which is also recognised in the report. Just wanted to confirm that for the record that the development application is fully compliant in that respect, and there is no variation to minimum lot size, and therefore no clause 4.6 variation request was submitted, nor was one required. So we've got a fully compliant DA. The other point I just simply make is that the location of this site within the Berrimah Conservation Area and the Landscape Conservation Area necessitates a development application for the construction of a future dwelling on the residential portion of the site. So the concerns raised around, hence the submission of a building envelope, but the concerns raised around the future dwelling can be properly considered with a development application in due course. So I commend the recommendation to the panel.
Okay, so I'll just check. Heather, did you have any questions? Oh, just take yourself off mute, Heather.
About that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering why there was, given that it is in two conservation areas, as you mentioned, Mr. Lee, and it's also next to a heritage item, I understand, why there was no statement of heritage impact submitted, or that's my reading of the report. There was no statement of heritage impact submitted with the DA.
No, there wasn't. That's correct. The issues, I suppose, were covered in the statement of environmental effects. It's not mandatory to submit a report, and in this case, the council didn't deem it necessary. The subdivision in that sense we considered to be quite simple. It's just using the provisions of clause 4.2C to create two lots aligned with the zoning, the split zoning of the property. So that's to be expected in that sense. And as I've just mentioned, a future dwelling house will be subject to a development application, and any potential impacts or rather the compatibility of the design of a dwelling house sitting between the two listed items can be properly considered at that stage. So we didn't think it necessary, nor did council, to require a statement of heritage impact.
Did you have any other questions, Heather?
Yes, sorry. And can I just ask what informed the proposed envelope? I can see there's a 12.5 metres setback. I think that's proposed. And where did that come from in terms of the actual quantum of the meters and the side setbacks? What was that a consideration of the heritage controls, or what decided where the envelope began and started and finished?
Combination of things. We discussed what would make some sense on the site with the council's assessment officer and myself and the owner. It was important. The most important consideration in our view was to get an appropriate street setback that was compatible, would lead to a compatibility with the adjoining properties. The site is the residential portion of the site is reasonably narrow, so that dictates some of the side boundary setbacks. The owner did in fact also talk to the adjoining neighbour to the south to gain some agreement with him as to what would be fair and reasonable. The length of the envelope just again arose out of some discussion with the adjoining property owner, and it just provides what would end up being a reasonable footprint or envelope from within which to design a reasonable size house. So the critical consideration was the street setback, and we think that that's the appropriate outcome. So that's how it's been arrived at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lester, did you have any questions?
Yes, I think part of the question I have is that it's arguable that development, even if a subdivision would constitute development, even though it's of marginal character in terms of the driveway that's been talked about and other works. And would that not have triggered a requirement for a heritage impact statement as part of this submission?
No, as I've mentioned, my understanding, at least, stand to be corrected, it's not mandatory to provide one. Clause 5.10 states that the council may require certain documents in order to make a full assessment. In this case, we didn't believe it was necessary to provide a standalone statement of heritage impact as distinct from making some commentary in the statement of environmental effects. And that view was agreed with by the council officer, who hasn't requested us to provide any further statement of heritage impact. So we think we've covered the issues in a reasonable manner in the circumstances.
I think that the DCP nevertheless indicates that any development within proximity of one or more heritage items requires an HIS.
Well, the DCP, I won't argue with that. If that's what it says, I believe you're correct. But that doesn't mean that we have to have one in every case. And in this case, the council hasn't requested it, and I didn't put one forward in the initial submission with the DA.
Okay. Under the village development, under the sort of the DCP plan, and there's a village development plan, this site is not shown to be residential future use. It doesn't seem to be referred to in your report. Was there a reason for not including it?
Well, as you've said, it's not shown. I think I know which plan in the DCP you're referring to.
Part A, section
the basis for the submission, or the DA, is on the basis of the LEP's provisions for subdivisions of split zonings. That's 4.2C. That's the legal planning basis for the DA to come forward. And from that point of view, what's being proposed is exactly what you would expect to see from those provisions. It creates two lots completely aligned with the zone boundaries. That's the basis of the application.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, I just had one question. Did you or your client get any advice from a specialist heritage architect about the form of any dwelling house and associated garaging that might go on lot 2?
No, not as yet, no.
Right, okay. All right, I didn't have any other
Yes,
questions.
I just have.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Mr. McCann. Yeah.
Sorry, Julie.
No,
Sorry, Chair. I do have just a couple of questions. Harper's Mansion precinct is obviously has significant heritage value, and I thought it would have been prudent. This is following on from the previous issues that have been raised by Alf and also by the Chair, that you would have taken the next step to at least prepare some idea about what it was that was going to be built on the land, given that the two adjoining properties are of historical significance, both lots 8 and 12.
I think that might have been a reasonable proposition if there was no further opportunity for the council to be involved in a development assessment. But as I pointed out, the location of the property in both the conservation area and its overlap with the landscape conservation area necessitates a DA for the development of the property. And that's the appropriate time, I believe, for that detailed assessment of a design and a dwelling and its ancillary structures to be assessed. The principal decision at the moment is on the subdivision, and the subdivision is simply providing exactly as the provisions of the LEP allow for. So my view has been all along that the decision at the moment is on the subdivision, knowing that the council still has a role to play in the assessment of the development of the site in due course. You may be right. It might have been advantageous to have some design exercise up front if the council was not going to be involved in the next stage.
And Mr. Lee, what are the trees that are actually sitting at the front of the property?
I don't know what the species are. I think the council officer's report says that so it's the same thing. He wasn't sure what they were, but they're certainly not significant certainly in his view and in mine as well. I'm not too sure what they are, to be honest. They're not very significant or attractive, in my opinion. I don't think they have any great ecological value nor cultural value in terms of plantings that are historic in Berrima.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry, I did have one more question. I don't know if you're like me, but every time I look at the exempt and complying development set, I get a headache.
Yes, like you.
Trying to work out what might be able to be built on this lot once it is subdivided without a DA. Did you come to any view about that?
Yeah, like I've said,
apart from a dwelling house.
Oh, right.
Is there anything else that could be built on it that wasn't a dwelling house under the exempt and compliance?
I believe some of the exempt provisions in terms of, garden sheds and things like that. There's no, my understanding is that any residential development, i.e. dwelling or anything like that, is necessary to go through the DA process and can't be dealt with as compliant development because of the conservation area. Exempt development, a lot of the exempt development is associated with some other use or occupation of the property. That it may be possible to put in a garden shed or something like that as a forerunner to some other residential occupation of the site as exempt development, but that would be the extent of it.
Okay, thank you. So we will, as I said, we'll retire to consider this matter with the others at the end of the public meeting and come back to announce our decision. So the next item, 5.3, there's no speakers. 5.4, stage concept development application 20/0492, including a two stages, stage one being a subdivision of the site and 2 allotments. So we will, as I said, we'll retire to consider this matter with the others. Has someone got the live stream on? Can they turn it off? Okay, so 5.4, we have one speaker, Ross Garlick. Is he in the meeting?
I am, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Garlick. So I don't have on my paper, are you speaking for or against the proposal?
For the proposal on behalf of the applicant.
Oh, okay. And you're what, the applicant's town planner or?
The applicant is actually Old Barrel Estate, the owner of the existing lot.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair and panel members. Speaking on behalf of the applicant with regard to the subdivision, just one moment, Bill. On behalf of the subdivision, our application was actually lodged with council in October 2019 and uploaded onto the portal in February of this year. Our application is to subdivide the land and create a separate lot on which to put a nursing home or a residential aged care facility, and reconfigure the existing or residual lot, I suppose you'd call it, to maintain the existing 106 independent living units. So the site at the moment is development approved initially in 2004 and upgraded in 2014 for 106 independent living units as a retirement unit, as a retirement village. We are in a position where we have a partnership agreement with a not-for-profit, being the Royal Freemasons Benevolent Institute, who primarily own and operate residential aged care facilities, to build and operate a nursing home on the site that will not only be of benefit to the existing and incoming residents on our site, but of benefit to the wider community to be able to provide services to those units on the site and services out into the wider community. On this basis, we've requested to be able to subdivide to create that lot on which to put the nursing home, and our intention is to gift or donate this to the Royal Freemasons Benevolent Institute to be able to do it. The existing village has 38 occupied independent living units and another 20 independent living units that are just about to be built, plus the clubhouse. The clubhouse is the existing homestead, or the older homestead on the site, which us as the applicant and the building owners, we spent approximately $1.5 million refurbing that building about 3 or 4 years ago. So, and it's being operated as the clubhouse and community facilities for the existing resident. Now, having read and spent a lot of time working closely with council in regard to this application, we believe we've worked very well with council and achieved an outcome that is of benefit to the wider community, of benefit to everybody around, and we meet and or exceed all the requirements of the appropriate LEPs and DCPs with regard to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, did you have any questions?
Yes, thanks, Julie. I understand the subdivision aspect of the application. At least as explained in the council report, I'm just a little bit confused about the what constitutes the concept. Is the concept merely seeking approval for a nursing home use on the new lot, or is it seeking building envelopes? Because I can see there's drawings and in the figures in the report. So in plan form, nursing home layout, and it also shows in plan form a layout of the new units on the residual lot, being the lot 1, but there doesn't seem to be any actual building envelopes that would seem to represent a concept. Would you be able to explain the part what the application is for besides the subdivision?
The subdivision and the concept. So it's the use and location and heights of the proposed nursing home, and it will be subject to a further development application with providing detail and a full development application level of detail in with regards to how and where it'll be located and the actual look. It's a concept in a position at the moment to approve the use of the land so that we can move it forward, bearing in mind, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, the Freemasons already have an approval for a 90-bed licence on the site. So it's a matter of working closely with the Royal Freemasons Benevolent Institute to design and build a brand spanking new nursing home facility that meets the needs of the residents now and moving forward.
So this approval that there's already approval for the same 90 beds but not on lot 2. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that in preparation for the application hopefully being approved, that the Freemasons have applied to the government, because they're only allowed to apply once a year to the federal government, for licenses for use on that site, which have been approved.
So separate to the DA process, you mean?
Separate to the DA process. That's a federal government process.
Okay, and the actual, if it was to be approved and built, is there actually any interaction between the seniors living or the independent living units and the nursing home? Like, does the nursing home part of the site, when it's subdivided off, only share the roads via rights of way, or
No.
or is there interaction between the whole development?
Oh, there's a significant amount of traction between the whole development, because the nursing home is able to provide, and Royal Freemasons already do this in a number of local council areas across New South Wales, provide services under the auspices of what's called ageing in place. So those services will be provided to allow the residents of the retirement village, and indeed the wider community, to remain in their home for longer with the support and services they need, and make it easier for those residents and the community to be able to transition later in life if and when they need nursing home care, which provides a benefit not only to the residents in the village, but the residents to the wider community in the local area.
Okay, I've had some issues about the admissibility, but I don't know if Julie wants to get into that aspect of it, or I ask?
Yes, ask away.
Okay. So my understanding is that to be permissible, as was referenced in the council report, the development relies on existing use rights. But there doesn't seem to be any documentation that explains how that arises. Like, when did the use become prohibited? We don't have a copy of the existing consent. We don't know exactly what was approved. What did you have some legal advice to come to the view that the development is permissible in terms of amendment to the current proposal? Because my understanding is the existing use right provisions are quite strict in terms of what constitutes an existing use and what you can do in terms of expanding a use.
Very, very early on, prior to us submitting the development application, we had a number of meetings with council's officers and the council executive, and agreed that it was an existing use right issue, because obviously it's up to council to make that ultimate decision as to whether or not it is or isn't existing use rights. And then prior to submitting the application, we actually went and presented to the council members at a meeting our proposal and concept to undertake, and we received their full support to proceed and with the application as it is.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any questions, Alf?
Yes, thank you. My questions really relate to the relationship between the approval that you have for the site, the subdivision of, or proposed subdivision of Lot 2, and the balance of the lands that are being modified or within that approved concept. So if I just quickly go through that, Lot 2 sits in the middle of the southern sector, and it would appear, but it's not clear to me, that the major change that you're proposing as a consequence of Lot 2 and the nursing home is the area to the west of Lot 2 being intensified in terms of residential capacity. But it's not, again, clear to me whether any other changes to the approved concept plan for the site are proposed. The documentation doesn't seem to address what has been approved and clearly state what parts of the approved development are being sought to change and the extent of change. I understand that you're extracting Lot 2 out of that proposal and suggesting a nursing home provision, but there's also not much reference to the significant expansion in capacity of the site, because it's now going to step up by a further 90 dwelling unit equivalents with a 90-bed nursing home. Has work been done to address those sort of issues in a systematic way? Because the moment
yes,
we have a concept.
Yeah, yes, it has. The only modification, I suppose, to the existing approval is that those units that were located under the nursing home site and the existing units that were approved directly to the west being relocated into assisted living, independent living apartments, into 2 low-rise apartments. And the forethought behind that was that the development needs to operate or provide to the local community a choice of different living arrangements for independent living, and a combination of apartments and villa style or almost residential style developments is able to accommodate that. The site is well serviced by infrastructure service, electricity, water, gas and sewer that more than capable of taking the additional load in relation to the 90-bed units. Yeah.
Has any further traffic work been done or traffic assessment?
Yes, there's a traffic impact statement submitted as part of our development application.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I just had one question. On the papers, it says you have Hogan Planning as your planning consultants. Are they still involved?
No, Madam Chair, they're no longer involved.
So do you have a new planning consultant?
Yes, we do. We're using Precise Planning.
Right, okay. All right.
Chair,
sorry.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, sorry, I keep
Thank you.
forgetting about you.
That's okay. Mr. Garlick, you mentioned before about the comment you made about ageing in place and the moving from independent living into the nursing home facility. Are there any plans to have the nursing home facility also take care of dementia patients?
Yes, definitely. It's one of, I'm free to admit, the Royal Freemasons are a very, very well-respected and long-established operator of nursing homes, dementia care. They've been in existence for well in excess of 100 years, and they're very, very, very good at providing those services.
So given that there's different requirements for managing dementia care patients in the facilities, what sort of planning has gone into what sort of thinking has gone into the planning to separate, I'm presuming, the 90-bed facility into dementia and also nursing care?
I would love to be able to answer that, but I'm far and away not an expert in the field of nursing care versus dementia care. And all those details will be provided and worked out along with how it's going to be managed as part of the detailed development application, which Royal Freemasons intend to make on the subdivided lot.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Heather, did you have another question?
Just one more thing to clarify. The development on the residual lot, the change to the different units and building form, does that envelopes, is that part of this application, or how is that going to be progressed?
That will be progressed by a secondary section 455 application to council, which will provide council with full details, documentation as per a standard application of that nature.
Is there any reason why that wouldn't have come together? Because if the two have two parts of the development work hand in hand, if you don't get the if you like, you can't get one bit approved without the other bit. Is there any reason why it wasn't done together?
It's provided the development application or the application under assessment with yourself is for a concept, not detail. So it's not an operational development approval. We still need to come back to council with details on not only the nursing home, but also details on the residual lot and the changes of apartments for a separate approval and assessment and review by council.
Okay, so yeah, I understand the concept of concept applications, but what are you seeking in concept on the residual lot from this DA?
Only the I suppose the location and envelope of those apartment blocks, potential blocks, just the block itself.
Okay, so that does form part of this application.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so has everyone exhausted their questions? Okay, all right, well, thank you. Along with the other matters, when we finish the public meeting, we'll go into closed session to deliberate on this matter, and I'll come back and announce the decisions, which will be live streamed. The last few meetings, it's been about 6:30 p.m. We might get through this a bit quicker, I don't know. All right, so the next item is 5.5, which has been withdrawn. So the next item is 5.6, modification application 20/0758.01, recreation facility, indoor alterations and additions at part lot 3, DP 11089992. Pool, Donkin Avenue, Mossvale. There are no speakers on this item, so we'll then move on to the next item, 5.7. There are no speakers to that item either. So the next item is 5.8, which is a section 8.2 review of DA 21/0212 subdivision 2 lots at 1 Sir James Fairfax Circuit Barrel, and Mr. Scott Lee is addressing the panel, I presume, on behalf of the applicant. Are you there, Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee, are you ready? Yep, we're ready for
yes.
you on 5.8. Yeah.
5.8.
Yep. It's the 8.2 review of the
Subdivision.
determination for 1 Sir James Fairfax Circuit
Yes.
Barrel. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, I don't have much to add to the report. What we have is a completely compliant development application, and we just sought to have a couple of the conditions that were imposed previously by the council removed. And the report has recommended that be done. So we're quite happy with that. And happy to answer any questions, but it's what we end up with is a compliant subdivision that can then be dealt with like any other property within that estate for future residential development. So happy to take some questions, but I'm quite pleased with the recommendation in front of you.
Okay. Heather, did you have any questions? No. Alf?
No.
No. And sorry, Mr. Lester. Mr. McCann?
No.
No. Okay. No questions. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
No, thanks very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so that completes the development application items. There are no speakers for the first two planning proposals, so 6.1 and 6.2. 6.3, the planning proposal to amend clause 1.9A2 of the Winchicarabi LEP to include the western portion of Retford Park Barrel Residential Estate. There's one speaker, Mr. Alan Robinson. Would you like to address us, Mr. Robinson? I'll give you 5 minutes because you're in fact the last speaker. So,
thank you.
yes, we're ready.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Am I?
Yes, we can see and hear you. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And good afternoon to you all. My name is Alan Robinson, and I am a joint executor of the estate of the late James Fairfax AC. I was a close advisor to the late Mr. Fairfax for almost 40 years up to his death in 2017, and was responsible for the work in planning the development and sale of the land surrounding the historic Italianate mansion Redford Park, which he bought in 1964 and gifted to the National Trust of Australia in 2016 for the benefit of future generations of Australians and the Wingecarribee Shire. The National Trust opens the house and gardens regularly for viewing by members of the public, and the historic dairy building is currently being converted to be an art gallery for the Southern Highlands, which should bring more visitors to the area. Mr. Fairfax, during his lifetime, had suggested that this conversion may take place, but after his death. The council has been very supportive of this development. I thank the council for that. The land subdivision was carried out for a number of reasons, but one of which was to help provide a significant gift of cash to the National Trust to be invested to provide income to help maintain the heritage property. Mr. Fairfax envisaged that the subdivision in this western area would comprise only lots of a size in excess of 1,000 square metres, and that the architecture and siting of the houses would complement the nearby historic mansion. To this end, the design guidelines were developed to preserve the lot sizes and the style of architecture. All purchasers executed agreements to comply with the design guidelines and ensure that if they sold their lot, they would require their purchaser to enter into the same arrangement. The purchasers of the land believed that the guidelines would result in a spacious and gracious housing environment for the benefit of all residents and benefit of the whole Shire. None of Mr. Fairfax or his advisors were aware at that time of the provisions of clause 19A of the WLEP 2010 and believed that the deeds to comply with the design guidelines would be binding. This has proved not to be the case. The agenda paper set out the history of the search to find a way to make the design guidelines binding, basically by amending the LEP. Our legal advisors had explored other ways to make this happen, but they were unable to find any. We believe that it would be to the benefit of property owners generally in the subdivision and for the Shire if the LEP could be amended in the manner requested or in a similar manner. I note that clause 1.9A to be applied, that for that clause to be applied, the proposal must, quote, provide good amenity and not adversely impact on existing buildings, close quote, and that a number of additional controls apply to those developments. These additional controls relate to the overall density of the development, separation between dwellings, and are contained in the Bowral District Control Plan paragraphs C 2.3 to C 2.8. I detailed these in a letter to the General Manager dated 27 April 2021 and pointed out the ways in which I felt those controls were not being complied with. Those, of course, were my judgments and they're subject to the eye of the beholder. The recommendation to the panel is not to pursue this matter further. However, I respectfully request that the council should consider this matter further and in particular give weight to two things. Firstly, the vast majority of landowners in this area bought in the belief that the design guidelines would be followed by all owners, and secondly, that having regard to the benefits to the Shire provided by the late James Fairfax AC, particularly in his gifting of Redford Park for the benefit of future generation, and his wishes in relation to the planning of this, that his wishes in relation to the planning of this land should be supported to the extent that is possible. We'd be happy to work with the council towards that outcome. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I think possibly one reason for the reluctance of the people at the Department of Planning to amend clause 1.9A would be the issue of precedent. So if there's an agreement or a covenant over land in favour of a public authority like a council or the state government, then then the clause does not apply to override any such covenants. Is there anything unique about this Retford Park development within the Shire that you think would mean that it deserves special treatment compared to any other lot in the Shire or any other development?
Well, it does adjoin the heritage building, and that does make it, I think, unique. James' concept was that these things should sit very comfortably together, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to have a look at the building that appeared on the first subdivision, lot 20, on Sir James Fairfax Circuit, but two rather large houses crammed onto just over 1,000 square metres. It is not consistent with the buildings on the rest of the estate, and so it would be contrary to, certainly to James' wishes and to the plans overall. So that the fact there's a heritage house there makes it special. We did enter into a voluntary planning agreement with the council, but in relation to all these things, which we thought was generous to the council, but council probably don't. But that's not terribly special, because I think the many places have done that. But so the thing that is special about this one is the proximity to the heritage property, and even having lots too close together near it is some detriment to that. So ask for those things if it's possible to find a way around that.
Thank you. I think I was actually at the meeting in May that you spoke at in relation to a DA and one of those sites. So I haven't actually been to the heritage building, but we did actually go to the estate. I think Mr. Lester was on that one as well. All right. Did you have any questions, Heather?
How long ago was the subdivision approved, and is it completed, or are there still lots yet to be developed under the subdivision?
It was approved firstly from memory 2015. This area, and all the lots were sold within a year. Sold, when I say sold, they were sold as vacant land, people to build their own buildings, hence the design guidelines. So the purchasers settled the lots as they were completed, and so it was not until, I think, late 2017, early 2018, that all of the lots the purchasers were all settled. So there's no more work for the developer to do, but the purchasers are still building lots of it. There's still not that many vacant lots left, actually. Yeah.
And how many lots are there, or how many different owners are there now?
I think there's 157 different owners.
Okay. And this is maybe a question for the council officers. I understand that at least the controls in some of the new planning controls, like for manor houses and so on, council can identify character areas. I'm involved with Randwick Council. They've identified certain parts of Randwick as a special character area where the manor house / fuel occupancy provisions don't apply. Is Winchikari looking at any character areas as part of the strategic planning?
Not that I'm aware of, but it'd be a very good idea if they did. Well, not only will there be the heritage house there, but in September, it's hoped that the Southern Highlands Art Gallery will open, controlled by the National Trust, or under the auspices of the National Trust, with a local committee that's raised a lot of money. to fit it out in a way that will preserve the paintings and so forth. So
yeah, I understand that it's not a part of a conservation area or anything, but maybe there's an opportunity to consider. It'll require extra strategic planning work, but to consider a special character area. But that was more to the council staff.
Look,
okay, thank you.
Look, I'm happy to answer that very quickly. Look, it is something that we've committed to looking at through the local strategic planning statement, is to look at identifying special character areas. So we haven't done that body of work yet, but certainly this area will be one of the areas that we looked at very closely.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lester, did you have any questions?
Thank you. I like our chair lady or chairwoman. We was fortunate to hear you speak at the previous meeting. I guess one of my questions relates to the number of corner lots that are likely to be impacted. Do you have any idea of the number of lots that are likely to be impacted by this particular issue?
Sorry. My recollection is that there were 17 such lots on the whole estate, and I think 12 of them have already had dwelling constructed on them. So I think there's only about 5 left, and one of which, one of the ones that built upon is contrary to our wishes, but it has been built. So I think there are 5 available corner lots remaining where this could occur. It won't necessarily, but it could occur.
Right. That's what I needed to understand. The other issue is that the recommendation is to seek for the minister not to proceed with this. Given your background and your deep involvement in this project, Mr. Robinson, do you have a fallback position or recommendation about how the objective might be secured if this other particular route is not available?
No, we have had our lawyers seek to find another way of achieving the objective, and they say they can't find any. The only thing they can think of is if the LEP could be amended. And I am a complete novice at property development. I have no experience apart from this one, really. So I can't help on that. But we're certainly prepared to work with the council to try and find a way. And if that involves spending a bit more money on getting clever people to work on that thing, well, we certainly consider that.
I guess that goes to another question that I just wondered to what extent council had been a participant in the evolution of the design guidelines.
Council were aware of the design guidelines. The design guidelines took into account all of the council's control plan requirements, and we did discuss them with the council, but we did never seek any formal approval of the council. Maybe that was an error in hindsight, but we didn't. But we had good relationships with the council throughout, I think.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. Did you have any questions, Mr. McCann?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robinson. We will, this is the last item, so we'll now be going to closed session and we'll be coming back to announce our decisions. So it's approximately 4:30 now, I'd say at least an hour. So I'll formally close the public part of the meeting, and if the fellow panel members and council officers could just stay in the meeting just briefly.